Russian dictator Putin has admitted the beginning of his war and the fate of Crimea. And American President Donald Trump cannot decide on the fate of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. These and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and local elected official in Wisconsin. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning from California, a land that is trying to figure out how it's going to exist in the new United States. And Slava Ukraine.
Heroям Slava, morning from Lviv and from Ukraine. Yuri, thank you for your time and for your opinions. So, Russian dictator Putin talked to his propagandist Zarubin and says that ceasefire in Ukraine is inevitable. The head of the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin, hinted at an inevitable ceasefire in the war against Ukraine, according to the Russian media, even though it is Russia that thwarts all attempts to implement one. It seems to me that this is inevitable despite all the tragedy we are experiencing now, told Putin. It's a matter of time, he said. So he doesn't stop the war, does not really need a truce and a ceasefire, only in order to rearm and move on, as we can assess all his steps. So, Yuri, how do you assess these statements of Putin about ceasefire in Ukraine? We think that these all words only lie.
I think it was pretty clear that this was something that was a project launched by the Trump administration with the blessing of the Putin regime. And these negotiations were always unclear what was going to be the purpose of them, because we had two problems that were rolled into one. On one hand, we have how to have immediate ceasefire. On the other hand, we have how to have a long-term peace. And those are two different issues that the mere fact that they were pushed into one highlighted to what extent they were not interested in actual peace by, I don't know, anybody's standard, not Putin's or Trump's, because, you know, we have the one perception of people who think that peace means actually guarantees and security, and others that feel that peace really means capitulation, if not takeover by another hostile country. So peace is not something that was in Ukraine's understanding was ever on the mind of the Russian regime and the Trump administration. Now they're being more obvious about it because really the goal is to normalize relations with Russia. And now they're just kind of pushing Ukraine off the train and saying, well, you were never serious about this. This goes back to the Putin's projection on the concept of how legitimate is Putin. Not very. How can he be trusted with agreements? He can't be. So, of course, he says that it's the fault of everybody else. Oh, particularly Ukraine. They're the ones who cannot be trusted. They're the ones whose president is supposedly illegitimate, according to Putin. So I think that those dynamics lead me to believe that this is a failed attempt by Trump's administration for Donald Trump to be on Red Square on May 9th, together next to Putin and Xi Jinping. But now it seems like at least Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, and National Security Advisor, who knows what other titles he may acquire. I think he already has a few. Yeah, because he's also in charge of USAID. I believe Secretary Rubio has now 4 different titles. So it's like if he goes to Red Square, that's like a lot of people, a lot of power, a lot of agencies that are now are traveling and showing their support. It's unfortunate because Americans don't have the appreciation for World War II like Russians do, and for the sacrifices that were made. And it seems like, you know, even though Russia and the United States had many different wars since then, it is the World War II or the Великая Отечественная война, the Great War of Fatherland, that is so close to Russian leaders' heart, perhaps because so many Russians died. No, not because they actually won, because that seems to be a problem, you know, in wars often, Afghanistan being an example, that didn't work out well for either side. But for the United States, it's unfortunate because we're going to see somebody who is going, you know, our Secretary of State, if not President Trump, who I know wishes, I'm convinced President Trump wishes he could be on May 9th on Red Square. But this whole manipulation about changing the victory day to May 8th, is really, I feel, in tremendous insult that we're not really covering enough, because World War II actually ended on September 2nd after Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed with nuclear bombs. And if we're now saying that that was outside of the scope of World War II, then what are we talking about? Does that mean that Japan can like file lawsuits against the United States because they were attacked not during wartime? What about the sacrifices of all the people who died, the veterans who died in the Pacific, fighting for United States, for democracy, for Europe, for everybody? But apparently now that's not considered to be part of World War II, according to President Trump. So we're seeing the same concepts starting to play out in the United States that we saw in Russia, where we see rewriting of history according to one man's desires. And of course, we're getting closer to the parade for Donald Trump's birthday, which is supposed to feature something like 50 helicopters and 7 different military bands. So you can tell that the Russian experience is becoming more and more prominent in American politics.
About this parade by Donald Trump and his birthday and the day of the USA Army, but we say that this day will be only about Trump's birthday, it seems to us. And in such facts, we really see that they have a lot in common, Trump and Putin. And you really know, I think that maybe really Donald Trump has this wish to visit parade in Moscow on May 9, but he's afraid because our President Vladimir Zelensky told that we cannot make security guarantees to that leaders which we will visit this parade because it's territory of Russian Federation, and I can add by myself that it's territory of that country who began war more than 11 years ago. So I think that Trump is afraid, and that's all.
You know, there's a part of me that would like to imagine a scenario where you have all the dictators in the world gathering on Red Square, and then a bomb is dropped on Red Square, and all of a sudden, billions of people lose a trusted leader and have to figure out things for themselves. I think that Ukrainians, on one hand, are entirely entitled to hit any part of Russia because Russia is attacking Ukraine. But I think that it is a pretty reasonable expectation to say that Ukrainians are not going to strike the Red Square because, well, I'm not sure it would be a bad idea, but it would have strong consequences. It's important, I think, to acknowledge that there are conversations about how to defeat Russia. And you have people who are saying it's important to start hitting Moscow because until Moscovites see that their quality of life has suffered, Russia is not going to change because Russia is about Moscow and St. Petersburg. That's one approach. That would be Yuri Filshtinsky, who I very much respect. Another one is Vitaly Portnikov, who I also very much respect, whose approach is strategy, will be to destroy Russia's supply routes, to destroy Russia infrastructure, so to kind of bleed them out and not make them able to fight, because Vitaly Portnikov thinks that attacking Moscow would only aggravate Russians even more wanting to destroy Ukraine. Then there's the approach that is preferred by my viewers, and I'm sure yours as well, which is just to kill Putin. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't seem to be a popular one on a state level, because whether we're looking at like Colin Powell approach, which is if we destroy it, we have to take it over, or what, you know, not probably going to happen. But I think that we can combine business with pleasure. I think it's very important because we have to stop Russia, but we can also enjoy it. And I think that's where attacks within Moscow on structures like FSB, Lubyanka, or Ostankino, their TV broadcasting capabilities, not, you know, like residential areas. No. But like the parts that of the information machine, of the attack machine that are so prominent, so visible, and would be such important symbols to be destroyed and attacked, it would really, I feel, cheer up not just people in Ukraine, but really people all over the world.
And it seems to me that Chinese leader Xi Jinping is like a stop Trump card to Putin, because he will visit Moscow, and it will be official visit. Peking told that it's really truth and to recognize this visit. Kremlin agreed it too. So according to this, we will not attack Moscow, it seems to me. How can Putin use this visit of Xi Jinping?
I think that Trump's Trump card probably is Trump, because President of the United States in your back pocket is pretty awesome. And I think that Ukrainians would not attack because there could be, you know, you don't want to destroy relations with China or possibly with the United States if you kill their state. I mean, this is just the problems that there would be is a big list. However, it's important to acknowledge that May 9th is becoming kind of a dictator celebration day. And we see that people who consider themselves to be authoritarian leaders, or even more broadly, Russian world, it's like the day of celebration of the Russian world, which is the opposite of Pax Americana. Pax Americana is the world that was built since World War II, where we saw that the United States provided safety and security in the world. Now we're looking at, you know, potentially May 9th as perhaps even a celebration or beginning of the end. You know, the dictator world, the Russian world, where you have all the people who won elections and either are not paying attention to democratic norms or just following in a Russian the direction, that are going to come together and celebrate the fact that there is more and more of them every year, it seems. But it's a wave. This will pass too. This is their moment, and the 80th anniversary of the defeat by the Soviet troops of the Nazi Germany in the world, in the Great Fatherland War of Fatherland, is a big day that has nothing to do with actually defeating Hitler, which is really kind of a big deal because the Soviet Union did not celebrate May 9th for many, many years until the veterans became kind of older and dead. And then they started to celebrate the victory. I think it's a very important sign when a state is afraid of their own veterans, when a state is afraid to recognize their own veterans, and a state is afraid to acknowledge that things didn't go as planned after the war, because the war was supposed to make things better. But of course, they just brought on another, 40, 50 years of Soviet dictatorship. So I think it's a very important day that we in the United States should probably acknowledge as a big, important day, not necessarily a holiday, but more of a day of sadness and day of awareness of the danger of the Russian world.
Yuri, how do you think it's really can be realistic that United States of America will withdraw at all from negotiation process between Ukraine and Russia? And what will it show, such position and such step? Donald Trump promised us to finish Russian-Ukrainian war for 24 hours, then for 100 days, then for more 100 days, and that's all? What can we think about it?
When you say us, do you mean Ukrainians? Because he did not promise anything to Ukrainians. If you mean United States voters, well, I mean, he promised a lot of different things. The main promise that he seemed to have kept is to conduct revenge and to be mean to his enemies. That seems to be something that the promise that President Trump is able to follow. Things like negotiations, so-called deals, are a big problem for him. They always have been. And in this case, he doesn't want to look bad, which is always the case for him in any negotiation. And so he has a choice. Either he makes a bad deal, which is the standard for him, or he disappears and says, this was a smart thing for me to get out of here because this bankruptcy just means that I should have gotten out of this business. Which means that Donald Trump has kind of a two-mode of operation. Either he covers up for something that he thinks is making him look bad, or he's making stuff up, creating the world that he lives in, but the rest of us do not. And kind of those are the two options that he's discussing. The negotiations fundamentally appeared to have fulfilled his purpose, which was to normalize relations with Russia. Because when we have Trump's personal ambassador, Steve Witkoff, who was described as an idiot by people who work with him and work in the administration. But of course, it's not like it's an administration of goodwill and people being nice to each other. So that's, a team of vipers, I guess, as was described. They're not going to achieve anything. They're not designed to achieve. They're not supposed to achieve anything, because when we have one person who is supposed to talk to Moscow, and that's Stephen Witkoff, and then we have another person who is supposed to talk to Kiev. How is this a negotiation? How are we being mediators? This is a setup. You know, sometimes you see situations that are set up to fail, and these negotiations were set up to fail. It is interesting that right now the Trump administration is so poor at predicting the outcome of their own actions that they did not realize that would be Russians and Kremlin who would be upset about Trump withdrawing from their negotiations, because Kremlin needs those negotiations to remove sanctions, to get their money back, to bring back Russia. They need the negotiations. And when Trump says, well, these negotiations are not getting the peace done and I'm here for peace, so I'm out of here, Russia's a little confused because they're going, no, Donald, we're not here for peace. We're here for other purposes. Come back to the table, which just highlights how inept he is at this process. This is not his. I think ultimate takeaway is from being in the United States and watching what's unfolding here. I think that the further you are from Donald Trump, the better off you are. Relying on Trump administration for guarantees of safety is just a laughable statement anymore, because we in America cannot count on guarantees of safety and law and all of those kinds of things, because we have the administration that we now do. We see that people who have legal papers to be in the United States being deported illegally to Salvador. We see American citizens, two 4-year-old with cancer whose mother is illegal resident of the United States who got deported. And so the 4-year-old is a citizen of the United States. When we see those kinds of things take place, and other countries are saying, we want United States to provide guarantee of our safety, I go, we can't provide guarantee of our safety. What safety are you talking about for Ukraine? So I think Ukraine and many other people in countries in this world found ourselves in a little bit, I guess, or almost like orphans, where you feel like you had a parent and you always have that backstop, and then all of a sudden the parent is not there, or a parent gets remarried to a step parent, and now we have this situation where America is just not what many people thought it was. America is a country, which means that there is people, which means that it's very different. But we are now starting to feel different. Americans are starting to feel awkward about traveling to other countries, because we go, well, we're Americans. We've done some. We have such a president. Maybe people wouldn't want to see us. And I'm starting to think of Americans as I'm watching Americans go through the same process as Russians went after big war started in 2022 against Ukraine. And Americans had to figure out, are we the good guys? Or Russians had to figure out that there's no way that they can be the good guys now. And does it mean that nobody likes Russians anymore? And they had to go through that process of having good Russians, not so good Russians, and it's a big divisive process in a society. And now we see exactly the same thing, slower, but more or less start to play out in the United States, when we see that our government is joining forces with somebody that we do not support at all. And it's hard for us to say, we're the good guys. You know, it's like in that meme from the old TV show, are we the bad guys now? I think a lot of people are struggling with this and taking it in different ways. And it's amazing, really, to what extent one president, one person can change the mood, the atmosphere in the whole. Well, of course, the atmosphere is also changing. We have information that fossil fuels and the situation with our environment has gotten worse in the last 100 days. Well, who would have thought? But it's just honestly surprising to me still when they discuss things with people from Wall Street who's supposed to know better, who operate with huge amounts of money, who leverage, just vast wealth, who go, well, we did not think that Donald Trump would do this. And when they are told that this is what he said he would do during the campaign, these smart, wise, rich people say, well, there's no way he would do something that terrible and that dumb. Okay?
Maybe now we see some middles that United States is between the bad and the good guys. I don't know really. And about Steve Witkoff and that article you mentioned about in the New York Post, which named him really stupid idiot and people who man who doesn't understand how to provide negotiations process really. And I think and I know that Donald Trump likes the New York Post and he trusts the New York Post. Maybe Trump will read this article, or maybe has already read it, and he can make some decisions, not about only Mike Waltz, for example.
I think that's one of the ways that we see people try to reach out to Trump, is through media, whether to appear on Fox News, as we see his entire cabinet show up on Fox News and speak to cameras. I don't know. They have agencies and departments to run, but they have more time to appear on the news on Fox News. I think that it's as we see Putin mock Trump more and more openly mock Trump and make fun of him. We're getting to the point that many people have wondered about what would happen when Donald Trump realizes that Putin is messing with him or is tapping him or whatever the nice term that Donald Trump is using to describe the situation. And the answer is nothing. Donald Trump, cannot accept that he's being made fun of by Putin. He's going to accept this in some kind of a favorable way. This is part of his mental state, that he cannot see Putin as a bad guy, is unable to see him as a bad guy. He's treating these kind of rejections from Putin as if Putin is flirting. Oh, he doesn't want to do this. Maybe he doesn't want to end the war. Maybe he's just tapping me along. It looks creepy. It looks macabre because we're looking at a war situation and we have these two old men trying to play footsies with each other. And it's interesting, and we would like to hope that this will lead to some kind of change where somebody will say, we need to do more. But right now, what we need to do more is the agreement about rare earth minerals, which appears to have been more of a demonstration of the fact that Trump administration can be made deals with, because they've had such problems getting anybody to agree to a deal with them. So to have at least Ukraine is very important for President Trump to say that he's capable of making deals, because we're starting to doubt that pretty much. But even that gives Ukraine very limited capacity to actually defend itself with United States help. And when we talk about $50 million that supposedly the United States approved in sales of services and things to Ukraine, I would still like to see one, bullet that's been provided by the Trump administration to Ukraine as of today, because we're going back to times of 2015 when the House of Representatives and Senate insisted that President Trump, the first term, send aid to Ukraine, and instead it ended up with impeachment of Donald Trump because he was trying to negotiate a little bit more for that help that he really didn't want to give in the first place. And the javelins that were given to Ukraine were told to be stored in Western Ukraine and not used unless something happened over there. So he doesn't want to hurt Vladimir Putin, and he doesn't want to hurt his relationship with Vladimir Putin. This is a situation that we're observing, and even though it's starting to look like he's trying to kind of have some kind of explanation for the terrible situation that he found himself in, Donald Trump, with Putin again, in the end, it's easier for him to throw away Ukraine, to throw away everything, and to stay with Putin. I feel that between his family and Putin, Donald Trump at this point would pick Vladimir Putin.
But Yuri, this week we saw a new decree for the Congress about selling equipment and weapons to Ukraine, more than $50 billion and even more than these numbers. Maybe Donald Trump will sell equipment and weapons to us in such format. We can agree.
I think that we see more and more people in the United States are starting to see that this policy is, A, hurting the national security of the United States, B, putting the careers of these politicians in danger. And so they're starting to see that they need to show themselves as, it makes sense to now be a little bit stronger against Trump because his support is falling, and they need to kind of cover their bases. They need to show that they are with Trump, but also in case something happens, that they also were aware and trying to do the right thing, weakly, meekly, barely, but sort of, and there you go. We see more and more Republican senators join the idea of opposing tariffs because they see that it's destroying our economy. We see more and more Republicans quietly question administration. They've looked for ways to quietly question during the Doge disaster, where they had direct access to Elon Musk and like Democrats who didn't have any access at all. And so Republicans were trying to do some things there, but they're doing it quietly, and they're ultimately appear to be more afraid still. And it's an ongoing process where we're going to kind of see how things are going today. But as of now, I would say that the congressmen and senators remain more scared of Donald Trump and their own base than, they're more concerned of Donald Trump than they are of their voters, because the voters are saying, we're not happy with you. We want these tariffs to stop. We want our economy to go back to normal. Things were okay. And instead, Donald Trump is saying, don't pay any attention. Just do what I say, ignore reality. And that's a very important choice for Republicans, ultimately, whether they accept reality or whether they ignore reality. If they ignore reality, then they're there with Donald Trump. And if they pay attention to reality, then they're going to be with the people.
Yuri, I see the beautiful bright inscription on your T-shirt. What sounds like "Who else but we will burn bridges?" And this inscription not about love, like in song by Christina Solovey, yes, but about bridges, and Crimean bridge. It seems to me too. I think that it's nearest future for this bridge, for this Putin's illegal construction. But Putin, mentioned about Crimea, talking to his propagandist Pavel Zarubin, and gives bizarre reason for Crimea takeover. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, in the propaganda film Russia, Kremlin, Putin, 25 years, has fabricated yet another justification for the 2014 occupation of Crimea. He claimed he was allegedly forced to side the Ukrainian peninsula. We are simply forced in 2014 to make a decision to support the people of Crimea and Sevastopol, because any other course of action would have meant abandoning them, Putin said. According to the dictator, Russia did the right thing by doing what they did. Who forced him, and what kind of crazy excuses are these words and statements? What do you see?
I think that I have 1% on my phone, so I will tell you that this is just it's an attempt to legitimize imperial thinking, whether it's to justify Russia taking over territory or United States taking over the territory. This is, emperors, wannabes, who are trying to explain to the world that they have a legitimacy for their illegitimate desires to expand their territory. Territory expansion is not 21st century. This is old stuff, and these people are old and need to be sent to history books where people need to learn about Putin and Trump, understand what not to do, make conclusions, and then learn history and practice it.
Yuri, thank you very much. Exactly, I can say that we will burn Putin's bridges, all of them, and his occupation forces too. Thank you. See you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English, and local elected official in Wisconsin. My name is Irina Uzlova. Thank you guys for joining and watching us. See you next week. Take care.